Hey there, Lionesses. This is Bobby Carlton. I'm the publisher and editor-in-chief of Lioness magazine. Lioness magazine is for the female entrepreneurs. I'm also the founder of Innovation Women, an online speaker bureau for entrepreneurial, technical, and professional women. And today we are here talking to Orly Zeewy. She is the author of a new book, especially for you, Lionesses. It is called Ready, Launch, Brand, the Lean Marketing Guide for Startups. So welcome, Orly. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, Bobby. I'm really excited for our conversation today.
All right. So let's learn a little bit about you, and then we'll talk about your book. So tell
Yeah.
us your origin story.
Well, it's a long story. By the way, I actually address it in the book. There's a whole section on identity, and I go into it. But what you need to know that's relatable in terms of, what I do and who I do this for is that I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. My dad was an entrepreneur. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. And on my mother's side, they were all educators. So what do I end up doing for a living? I'm an educator and an entrepreneur. So I think it's really true. It's just kind of built into your DNA, your genes that this is just who you're going to be. And about 5 years ago, I finally made the decision to really focus exclusively on startups and founders and entrepreneurs.
Gotcha. So you came by the entrepreneur, author, teacher,
Yeah,
honestly.
exactly.
So, okay, tell us about this awesome book.
Well, it's definitely been a labor of love. It took 5 years to get this book done because, 2 years I spent just on the interviews because I interviewed founders for the book. And then I spent another 2 years trying to decide whether I would self-publish or get a publisher. And then decided to do this and got a publisher. But the book is really a guide for anyone starting a business. And what I've enjoyed about doing the book is the stories, which, I can share a specific story with you. But, I interviewed these founders who gave advice that literally corresponded with everything I talk about in the book. And it was not, I didn't tell them to say these things. No one got paid to do these interviews, but it's really amazing to me how many of them really came to the same conclusions that I talk about in the book. And then the other thing that the book really has is it's got exercises from my brand building process that I've developed over 20 years, so that you can actually yourself use the book to figure out what your value proposition is. So I've included those because in my mind, I believe that I would love to see this, for the book to eventually be, I want it to be like dog-eared, with Post-it notes in the pages, because it is not a textbook, right? It is meant to really be used and referred to.
So what makes it different from other business books?
Right. So there are so many books on branding, so many books. The problem is that a startup can't handle all the advice that are given in most books, because most books are not tailored to a startup in the first year of business, which is really what I focused on. So that's why it's a lean marketing book. It's not, a lot of these brand books are all about, you have a product, what are the things you need to do in terms of starting your business. You need to figure out, what your product is going to be, and you need to have a whole product launch. It's a lot of pieces that typically work better when you've been in business for a couple of years. So there really, as far as I know, there is not a book that's really a guide. And by the way, it's a guide, not a textbook. It is meant to be read within a few hours. It is not something that I see sitting on someone's shelf. I really would love to have people say to me, wow, I refer back to it because it's giving me information. And also because I combine founder stories with what I hope will be some dispelling of some of these marketing myths that a lot of people hold very near and dear. My favorite one is, we'll pay for marketing when we have money to pay for marketing. I have to say, that's like the classic, right? And in all the years I've been doing this, that has never happened. Yeah, because marketing is how you get money to pay for marketing. So the moment someone says, I'll get to it when I have money, I know they never will. And so then what happens, down the line, all of a sudden they go, maybe I should think about marketing.
Oh my goodness. So you mentioned startup stories. You want to share a couple stories with us?
Yeah, so one of the stories is actually it's in the chapter that focuses a lot on market research. I mean, the chapters are not set up in terms of what to do. It's more about around the myths around marketing. And so this one is a pediatrician who literally did exactly what I think is the recipe for success in starting a brand new doctor's practice in a neighborhood. First of all, she found the right neighborhood. That's the first thing she did. She did all this research and she found a neighborhood in Philadelphia that was going through a baby boom. Then what she did is she found the influencers, the moms who kind of knew all the other moms. And then she started interviewing them and meeting with them and getting to know their kids and asking questions. She spent months, literally months. She went to their homes. She met them in coffee shops. She asked them, what are the things that you want to see in a pediatrician's office? And so when she opened her practice, she already had 30 patients, which is phenomenal, right? Versus opening up the practice and then someone magically hoping that you'll get enough patients so that you don't go under in the first year. So that's like a classic example of, understanding who the customer is, what the customer wants, and then building your practice around these things and being able to actually deliver them, right? And actually, one of the things that she found out was that she needed to have a chalkboard at child's height, which is something she never would have thought of if she hadn't asked the moms about that.
That's neat. That's a great story.
Yeah, favorites.
What, I'm sorry?
I said it's one of my favorites. Yeah, I love that story because it's so perfect. Yeah.
It really shows, I think, a really good understanding of, that whole startup process.
Exactly.
So kudos to her.
Yeah. And she's very successful, by the way.
Not surprising.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little about building a startup team. Who do I want on my team? What do they look like?
So that's an excellent question. And really what you need are, I mean, often I find that the best startups usually have a couple co-founders because quite honestly, doing it all yourself is really hard. And you need other people to bounce things off of, right? But you need a COO or someone who's operating as a CEO because typically the CEO, all the founders I've ever worked with are incredibly passionate and incredibly excited about what they do. And they're visionaries, right? So they're the keeper. They sort of establish the vision and they're the keeper of the vision. They need to make sure that the vision gets, continues, right? But they're not the people who are implementing. So you need somebody who is an organizational person, and then you need a money person. You need somebody who understands, right? You need a CFO kind of person. And ideally, you would need a CMO, which is a marketing person, or at least have someone on your team that's going to operate from that perspective. So I also find it so interesting that the first thing that founders do is they find an IT guy, a legal guy, right? A legal person. I say guy because most of the times it is guys, although I'm hoping that will change. I am not advocating for that, by the way, so you understand. But, right, so they have IT people, they have legal people, they have an accounting firm. I mean, these are all like when when they look at starting their business and where they're going to spend the money, that's where the money goes. And in fact, one of the people that I interviewed said to me, when it came to hiring a developer or hiring someone to do the marketing, we chose the developer because we felt that was more important to our business. And I'm thinking, that is so interesting because marketing honestly is how you build your business, right? So you need those people. And then, like I said, the CEO, their role is really to be chief vision officer. That's their role.
Oh my goodness. So with this team in place, like why, if you pick the right team,
right,
why do startups not make it? Why do they fail?
Well, because actually, to your point, the number three reason they fail is because they have the wrong team. And the reason they have the wrong team, I mean, I say like in the perfect world, yeah, you'd pick all these amazing people. The problem is it's not just enough to have people who fill those roles. They have to be aligned with your vision. And here's where things fall apart. If you don't take the time to identify your vision and get really clear on what that vision is and why it matters to you, what your core value is, what your value prop is, how do you bring people in who are aligned with it if you yourself don't even understand it? So the other two, and there's 20 reasons, but I don't have to go through all 20 of them, but the number one reason is no market need. And that's a really interesting one. The second one, by the way, of course, is running out of money. So not surprising, because if there's no market need, that means you have no customers. If you have no customers, ergo, you have no money. So the two kind of go hand in hand. But the thing about this brand building process that I've been working with for a long time is that it's a two-sided process. On the one hand, you clarify your brand, like who you are, who you're not, so that you can attract you can build the right team. And on the other hand, you also identify who your ideal customer is. So because so many times in the beginning of a startup, again, because we're thinking about, oh my God, we need customers, founders have this idea that, oh, I'm just going to pull out this wide net and I'm going to somehow land a whale. The problem is you're also landing, old boots and, a bunch of crabs and fish, gold, whatever, you don't. So, right, because it's a wide net and you haven't identified what a whale even looks like, right? So it's a whole it's really a mind shift for me. That's really why I wrote this book, because I kept seeing the same thing over and over and over again of people, and here's what happens. At year 3, all of a sudden they go, oh my God, nobody knows who we are. We can't cross sell because our salespeople can't even explain, it takes them an hour just to explain what we do. People land on our website. They have no idea what we do. I mean, I've been on websites literally and this is what I do for a living, and I will go through the entire website and I have no idea what you do. And this happens over and over and over again. And they think that marketing is going to be some kind of magic pill that's going to solve this. But if you don't know who you are, no amount of marketing is going to magically get people to come to you, because you haven't figured out what they're coming for.
Man, so you shared some interesting stats about failure. You also shared some interesting stats in the book about startups.
Yes.
Share some of those?
Absolutely. So one of the things that's really interesting is, first of all, 500,000 companies are launched every month in the US, just in the US, and that was pre-COVID. So the last thing, and of course my book came out right during that time. So, but since COVID, just in 2020, there's been an uptick of 24% of new companies. 8 out of 10 of those will fail in the first 5 years. And what's interesting about that, though, is if you make it to year 5, your chances of survival, of success, increase exponentially. So the key is to get you to year 5 so that you don't fail. The other statistic is, and again, this is when I wrote the book, and of course things are constantly changing. There were roughly 1.8 billion websites in the world, and there are now 2 billion. This is just in the year and a half. They're now 2 billion. Most of them get no visitors, literally no visitors. And that's because you've got all these things out there, and there's no compelling reason to come and visit you. So when people say, oh, I'm going to launch a website, and they think people will somehow magically appear, that is not going to happen. You have to lead them to you. And then the other statistic is around social media. Again, the most recent statistic I found is that roughly 49% of the world is on social media. So when I talk to founders who have no idea how to use social media, or they say, oh, we don't really need social media, I remind him of that quote and say, that's nearly 50% of the world population is actively on social media, not just once in a while. Yeah.
Wow.
And I can
Oh,
give you stats like on LinkedIn, something like 89% of HR professionals find talent on LinkedIn. So if you're either are looking for a job or you're looking to connect with decision makers, you need to be on LinkedIn. I mean, there is no other platform to be on. That's the platform to be on in the B2B world, in
wow.
business. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that you've mentioned, and this is something that I wholeheartedly endorse, is that startups rarely budget enough for marketing. Actually, I hate that they don't spend enough on marketing. I run a marketing firm as my day job.
Yeah.
How should they be thinking about marketing and budgeting?
That's an excellent question. And here's where I think this is, where the kind of the rubber meets the road kind of thing. Because what happens is that people believe that marketing is something that lives on their balance sheet. I spend X amount on marketing, I should be getting X in return. That's not how marketing works. It's like IT. You don't buy new software every couple of years and expect it to somehow, give you a magical return. It's an investment. Marketing is the same thing. Marketing should be seen as an investment that you invest in every year for the rest of your business. It's not just, oh, I'll get to it eventually. And if you think of it that way, when you have lean years, you don't do what a lot of companies do, which is they cut their marketing budget. In fact, the rule of thumb is that you should be spending 10% of gross on marketing. 10%. Nike spends, I believe they do actually spend 10%, which is, for them, it's like in the millions, but it's still 10% of their gross revenue.
Wow. Still massive number.
Massive number. And people go, well, I can't afford it. I say, really? But yet you'll pay $500 an hour for an attorney. You'll spend $10,000 on new IT, an IT program or software and all the support. And, you don't think twice about that, right? Or you have an app developer and how much does it cost you to build an app? Why is marketing not one of those things? Because it's the engine that makes all those things work. So it's just, I find it really interesting. And I explore that a little bit in the book of how we got there, how we got to that place where marketing is seen more as a, kind of nice to have, or, I'll get to it eventually, No, it really needs to be kind of baked into your startup right from the beginning.
Absolutely. So, Orly, if people are waiting and not doing marketing up front, when are they starting marketing and when should they start marketing?
So here's the difference between traditional marketing and lean marketing. So traditional marketing is what most people think of when they think of marketing. And they think of like getting an ad on the Super Bowl, which is like millions of dollars for like a 30-second spot. And the truth of the matter is that traditional marketing really works best for brands that already exist, that already have a big following, that are already well known, that are household names. When you're starting out, your goal is not to advertise, which by the way does not work for startups. It's really about letting people know you exist. It's about building brand advocates. It's about finding early adopters. It's about helping your brand kind of cut through the noise, building buzz so that people are excited about your brand. That's the role of marketing. And that's why it's lean marketing is really a lot of those kinds of things around, start from day one. Don't wait 3 years to do it. But don't think that you have to invest, millions of dollars to do that. That's why people stop and they go, oh, well, I can't afford it, because they think they need that kind of money to do anything useful. And social media, I mean, that's like a gold mine if you know how to use it properly. But the goal is really to build the buzz, get early adopters, and build a community of brand advocates.
So you call yourself a brand architect. What is a brand architect?
Right. I'm not I don't build buildings, but okay. What I do is I build the DNA of brands. and specifically startup brands. Although, I also do brand tune-ups where I come in with, again, the same kind of situation where you have a brand that's kind of hit a wall, and I come in and I do a tune-up. But yeah, because there's all these building blocks that I've identified and think about in terms of like building a house. You're building a brand. So that's why I call myself a brand architect.
Makes sense to me. All right, let's go back. Let's talk about that all important first year for a startup.
Right.
What's on the agenda for them?
So the first thing they have to do, like I said, they've got to figure out who they are. So that's why the first exercise in the book is on how to identify your value proposition. And people are always really nervous about this because they think that if they identify who they are, that somehow they're missing out on other things, that they're leaving too much on the table, But what I have found is that the clearer you are, the more focused you are, the more niche you are, the more successful you are. The moment I realized that what I really loved to do was work with startups, everything shifted. And I realized, like, oh my gosh, this is what I've wanted to do all along. Why haven't I done this? Because I suffer from the exact same problem, which is, but I also do work for nonprofits, and I work with teams, and I do all these other things, and I've worked with with boards, and yeah, okay, you can still do that, but that doesn't mean that's what I'm marketing. And the moment that I shifted that, my thinking really shifted, and I started to really get focused. So I live the same thing that I tell my clients. I'm just as guilty of not knowing how to do this because as humans, we hate the idea that we're somehow not reaching more people, right? But here's what I've also found is that, if you try to talk to everyone, you're talking to no one. So you want to get your story. That's another piece. And it's a big part of this brand building process is what's your story? And by that, I mean, not just, I had this idea and, I did this and these things happened, but the story as it relates to your ideal customer. And that's the other piece, understanding not just a customer, but your dream customer. Because in my mind, that first year of business, you have nothing to lose by identifying that dream customer, right? And later it's much harder because, a lot of times what people will do, and I'll tell you this is, they just kind of put stuff out there and then their business gets dictated by the people who respond, as opposed to identifying the business they want to be in, identifying the people who want what they're offering, who will actually pay a lot of money for it because they see the value in it. And that's the business they're in. And the more clear that you are at the beginning, the repercussions are huge. Like I said, it helps you get the right team. It also, as you get more seasoned, it helps you attract and retain top talent. And it helps you scale much faster than you would if, by year 3, you should be like really kicking it, that you should be at a place where people are coming to you and you have more business than you know how to handle. And that happens if you start thinking about it that way from the beginning.
What a great story. All right. Before we go today, any last minute tips for our entrepreneurs?
So, I told you this, that I conducted a poll on LinkedIn and I asked people, what are I gave them 3 options and there was an other, but they picked the 3 options, and the 3 options, I'm going to look at my page here. So the 3 options were building the right team, which we've already talked about, the role of brand identity, and attracting the right customer. So the thing about attracting the right customer, which I feel like that was actually one of the top ones for a while, and then eventually they were all equal, like literally 33% on all 3 of them, which was crazy. I did not expect that. But it did tell me, I will say, that obviously I've hit on something, because these are the things I talk about in my book. But attracting the right customer is, like I said, it's really about, speaking in an authentic way, and using messaging to engage, connect with the people who you really want to connect with. And, I talk a lot about the role of an elevator pitch. So for me, an elevator pitch, unlike a sales pitch, I'm not selling you anything. I'm really kind of presenting you with this is what you'll get, or this is the value of what this is, right? And if I get the deer in headlight, that's great. You've just saved me months of chasing after the wrong customer. So I would say that, in the process of building the elevator pitch, I also help people get clear on who they are and who they're not. And it's a gift when somebody doesn't want what I'm offering, because it means that, okay, great, maybe I can help them find, make another connection, or I can refer them to someone else. It's not a lost cause, because for me, an elevator pitch is a conversation. It's not a sales pitch. I'm not trying, if I don't sell you, that doesn't mean I walk away. But I think attracting the right customer, like I said, to do that, you have to know who they are. You have to know what matters to them. You have to understand their pain point. And your website, this is such a huge missed opportunity that I see over and over again. People land on a landing page, and there are only two things they should be asking themselves. Why am I here, and why should I care? If you haven't answered that in 6 seconds, I'm gone. I never come back, and I don't tell anyone about it. So for me, the key thing is get a landing page that instantly says to me, you get me, right? Because again, you're not trying to reach everybody. You're trying to reach a specific customer who has a specific need that only you can solve. And that, when you do that, it's really kind of magical what happens.
Neat. Okay. Orly Zeewy, author of new book, Ready, Launch, Brand, the Lean Marketing Guide for Startups. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.